thank you for coming. We appreciate you coming out on a rainy, yucky evening, and we're also recording, so that we'll be able to send out this recording to anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight or who wants to watch it again. So thank you to DSU TV for being here. I'm Beth McCoy, I'm the superintendent, and I'm joined by our assistant superintendent, Denny Conklin. Just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know me. I was assistant superintendent for 5 years before becoming superintendent. This is my second year in this position. I'm a Sherborn resident. I have 2 children in 8th grade and 10th grade, and my husband is a proud graduate, as are his 3 siblings from the Dover-Sherborn schools. Before here, I was at Boston Latin School, and then way back when, I started my career as a middle school teacher. Anything you'd like to say about you?
No.
All right, we got the clicker. All right, so in the next hour, we are going to try to provide you an overview of current district data and demographics, highlight examples of school programming and student outcomes, and outline initiatives and next steps in support of our shared vision for 21st century learning, as is outlined in our new strategic plan. So if we rewind a year, when Denny was in his first year in his position, I was first year superintendent, we went through the entry process and we were guided by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents to do so. And really this is an opportunity to listen and learn from our community, and we did that through focus groups, interviews, and surveys, to look at the data and look for patterns, and then develop a strategy of what do we really want to maintain at Dover-Sherborn, and how do we want to move forward in order to continually improve as the world changes. So, list of our interviews and our questions, all of the documents that we reviewed, and then we triangulated the data. So we tried to find the commonalities between the observations of things that we were seeing when we visited the facilities in the classrooms, data that we could count in all of the documents, and then what we heard from all of our stakeholder groups. During that process, we were able to identify a number of strengths that our community, students, teachers, parents, and community members said, this is why we value the Dover-Sherborn schools. Without a doubt, academic excellence was the top strength, and that's the reason that we know most all of our Dover and Sherborn families and Boston families want to attend school here. So we want to make sure that we maintain excellence and that we're preparing our students to do whatever they want to do when they graduate from Dover-Sherborn High School. The sense of community is really important to our community. They love the sense of camaraderie that there is between neighbors, the events that we have together, and that we really take care of each other. Educators and staff are valued members of our community. Students and teachers are so grateful for the talented educators that we have that develop relationships with our students day in and day out. Our students, of course, are the highlight. They are so talented, and whenever Denny and I are having a rough day, we always go to a classroom and see them shine. They are certainly a strength of our district, and we are so excited to see them go on and blossom and then come back and share their stories. And the focus on the whole child was something that came out time and time again. And we'll talk a little bit about challenge success in a minute, but the fact that we do want all students to succeed academically, but we also want them to be well with their social emotional well-being, their health, have relationships at school, a sense of belonging. While we went through this process, we also had an opportunity to uncover our roots as a district. Who are we? So no matter what changes come ahead, where are we going to land? What isn't going to change? And that is the focus on the kids. So no matter whether we're making a curricular decision, a budget decision, we want to make sure we're doing what's in the best interest of kids. It's sometimes easy to make adult-centered decisions, but we want to keep them at the center of all that we do. Challenge success, I mentioned earlier. We became a challenge success school 10 years ago. Challenge success was started by Stanford University when that area of the country was having difficulty with students making bad choices and harming themselves because their level of stress was so high. They felt they had to have 10 AP classes and a 5.0 to go to MIT, and if that didn't happen, then their life was over. We were the first district on the East Coast to adopt challenge success, and we are one of the first districts to adopt it K-12. So we're celebrating our 10th year this year. We'll be hosting the spring conference, and changes that we can really say came from this experience. The elementary level, having more playtime, having mindful activities, thinking about homework and what's appropriate for K-2 students and 3 through 5 students. At the middle and high school, both schools have breaks at different times, so students can kind of get up, move around, have a snack, change the channel, and then go back to learning and be much more ready for learning. Homework-free weekends. so that kids can shut off and have time for playtime, downtime, and family time. And the change in start times was because of challenge success as well. And lastly, another route is our DS Portrait of a Graduate. So in 2019, I was assistant superintendent, and I gathered 60 community members, students, parents, teachers, administrators, and we came together. We watched documentaries, we did research, we went out and visited schools, we had speakers come in from a number of places, and the question that we tried to answer is, what do our students need to be successful in college, career, and life, and how can we be preparing them for that after 12th grade? What skills and competencies should we focus on? Certainly, our teachers are experts in their content areas in biology, chemistry, and calculus, but these are the skills that we really want to make sure that through those avenues of content, our students are practicing every day. So we are keeping this at the forefront. Denny is doing a lot of work with our teachers around what does communication look like in 12th grade? What does communication look like in 2nd grade? And how can we make sure we're building these skills as we are also assessing content knowledge? Current data and demographics. So that's who we are. Where are we right now with our data? So student enrollment, Dover at Chickering, we have 475 students, Sherborn 391. At the region, we have a nice number of 1111 for a total of 1,977 students. This is pretty typical for student enrollment over the last 10 years, and Dawn, our business administrator, is wonderful about tracking patterns in enrollment, projecting out so that we can make budgetary decisions and staffing decisions accordingly. A little sense of who our kiddos are. You'll notice that here's Chickering, Pine Hill, and the middle and high school at the region. For those of you who don't know, we're actually 3 school districts. So that's how we categorize ourselves. We do all paperwork and finances 3 times. But as a district, we have 25 multilingual learners. And those are students whose first language isn't English. And I bring that up because we have had a huge increase in our multilingual learner population in the last year. And so we went from having 1 ML teacher to 2 full-time teachers, and we're still looking to expand as those numbers increase. Special education across the district, roughly 16% of our students get specialized instruction. That's pretty typical for a school district like ours. Our out-of-district numbers, our total is 34 students. So between all 4 schools, we have 34 children who need to be serviced in other schools because their needs are beyond what we can accommodate here. This number has been decreasing over time. If you look back 5-10 years ago, it was 50, 60 students, and it's coming down because we've expanded programming so that we can keep our children, our neighbors, their friends in district so that all can flourish from having the experience of a diverse classroom of learners. And then just some demographics about race. Class size, definitely a strength of ours. So you'll see both elementary schools, our average classroom is 19 students. Both have policies and guidelines that our school committees use when funding our educators. We try to keep our classrooms between 17 and 23 because we think that's a great number to be able to accommodate the needs of our individual learners in the classroom and maintain the best learning possible. At the region, so the middle and high school, our average class size is 16.2, which is very similar to what you see at a private school. I'm going to turn over the...
Alrighty.
Here we go with academic data.
All right, so some of the academic data. Before I get started on the academic data, I'll just say how wonderful it's been over the past year and a half to be here in Dover-Sherborn and get to know the teachers and the families and the students. I also feel really lucky to get to work with Superintendent McCoy and kind of see her vision, her leadership for the district. So it's really been great to have somebody. I think we're really lucky that we have a superintendent that keeps teaching and learning at the forefront of what they do. And that type of job, I think it's easy sometimes to get caught in all the logistics. But I love that about our superintendent. That is the teaching and learning piece that she's always thinking about and really just leading all that work at the top. So I get to speak a little bit about where we are in terms of some of our academic data. So this is just some information overall about our MCAS scores. We know that our MCAS scores are just one data point that we use to determine where our students are at out of many, but it is one of kind of the standard ones that we see from the state that all of our students take. So you can see when we go through elementary, middle, and high school that we have great percentages of our students in ELA, math, and science who are proficient. That means that they're meeting expectations or they're exceeding expectations. Kind of the one number I'll point out that I feel like is really, really impressive At the high school level in science, 86% of our students are proficient in science. Then you can see 41% of our high school students are exceeding in science. So a big shout out to our science department, to our middle school teachers in the science department that are prepping students to get there. But that's a really, really impressive number. Another piece of academic data that we have, again, these are just smaller data points that are paint a bigger picture in combination with other things. Our SAT scores, you can see that a lot of colleges and universities are starting to drop SAT scores as a requirement. However, we know some schools do still require them, and a lot of our students are still taking them. So it's another way that we can kind of compare how our students are doing to how other students are doing throughout the United States. We can see 77% of our students earned a combined score of 1,200, with a mean score of 1,291. 98% of all of our students who took the SATs last year met the benchmarks on the evidence-based reading and writing, with 87% of our students meeting the benchmarks on math. So when our students do choose to take tests like the SATs and the ACTs, they're doing very, very well on those. Same with our advanced placement course data. For such a small high school, it's incredible to see the amount of AP courses that we're able to offer. So we offer 15 AP courses. When I was going through the data this past summer, it's really impressive that in 12 of the subjects, so that's 12 out of the 15 courses, our mean score went up from 2022. And then in 5 subjects, we had the highest mean score in the past 5 years. So we're seeing a lot of growth in how our students are doing in those AP courses. Another impressive statistic is that 77% of graduating seniors at some point in their high school experience scored 3 or above on an AP exam at some point. So we're seeing that a lot of our students have access to AP courses, and then when they take them, they're doing quite well, getting that kind of benchmark score of 3 or above on the AP exams. One of the things that we are trying to continue to keep an eye on is making sure that every student is having access to the higher level classes. This is a breakdown at the high school of the AP enrollment, honors enrollment, and the college prep enrollment. You can see that we actually have more students, 1,498, taking honors courses versus the college prep courses. A lot of that has been discussions that departments have had at the high school about how they can be talking about getting students into honors classes, moving them up from CP classes to honors classes, thinking about what that requirement looks like in order to get into the honors classes, and to a lot of the prep that our teachers are doing at the middle school and the high school to get our students ready for those higher level classes. 536 students taking AP courses. This is a chart from DESE where they track how many of our students have access to what they call advanced coursework. So that can be AP courses, that can be advanced electives. We don't have an IB program here, but those courses count as well. We can see that around 96% of all of our high school students are completing what DESE would call advanced coursework. And then you can see how it breaks down by the different subject areas. So we know that we still have some work that we want to do as a district in making sure that all of our students, specifically when we're thinking about some of our low-income students, when we're thinking about some of our students with disabilities and our African American and Black students, really getting them more access, giving them the supports they need and the opportunities to take those advanced courses. So we know that that's some work that we want to continue to work on as a district, making sure that everybody has those opportunities. But you can see that we are making really good progress on getting students into all those advanced courses. And I will turn the graduation rate stuff back over to Superintendent.
While I'm thinking of it, speaking of advanced placement honors courses access, so for years and years and years, our state accountability system was based on MCAS scores and how our students were doing in MCAS, and were we continuing to raise the bar and all of our students being able to meet certain benchmarks. Now, as you probably hear, there's a lot of conversation that the accountability measures are going to change, and they're going to include attendance, because after COVID, attendance has been such an issue for a number of reasons, both actual health issues, social emotional issues, as well as access to higher level courses. They want to make sure that not only are all students doing well in the MCAS exam, whether or not it's a graduation requirement, moving forward, we'll find out. But they want to make sure that we're providing access for our special education students, our multi-language learner students to higher level courses, whether that's honors and AP, and they're going to be holding us accountable to that. So our graduation rate, you can see as we've moved over time, has actually increased. This is the pandemic era, which is why it dipped a little bit. And the percentage of students matriculating into 2 or 4 year colleges has remained pretty steady. Last year, it's worth noting that roughly 86% of seniors were accepted into their top 3 choices. So our guidance department does a phenomenal job working with our juniors and seniors to look at a number of different colleges to talk about what would be the best fit for them, where you're going to plant the seed and they're going to grow the best. And so we are finding that the students are identifying colleges that are accessible and that are good options for them and getting accepted there. And it's if you look at the 10-year average, it's right within that means. Lots has changed in the college world since the pandemic. So that could be a whole nother conversation about how admissions have changed, including SATs, but we're still maintaining some good scores here. College matriculation. So this year's senior class, November 1st deadline came and went. A lot of them applied early decision to schools. Here's some of the acceptances that our students have received so far. So as you see, a variety of colleges, both nationally and internationally, some Ivy Leagues in there, but a good array. And I will mention that, is it in here? MIT?
Yeah, I was going to say it's not there.
It's not in there. We have 3 students who got an early decision into MIT, which is a record for us. So we are super thrilled and proud of them. Total acceptances to date, so anywhere they've been accepted, early decision or otherwise, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go there, but again, a great list of schools, and there's our MIT. I need to make sure that it goes on the other one as well. There's no Colgate though. Student support in special education. So we have a number of programs for students, any student to access, as well as those who are identified as needing individualized education programs. So we have a goals program that runs throughout the system, and that is for students who might have autism or cognitive challenges. We have a language-based learning disability program for students who might have dyslexia and need additional support with reading and writing. The GRIT program is an emotional program, SEL program that runs K-12. In the Bridge program, you don't have to have a special education plan to be in the Bridge program. It's open to all students. You'll see it's in the last 20 years become very popular through the BRIGHT program in our area, and it's an opportunity for students who miss an extended period of time, whether it's the loss of a loved one, whether it's for treatment, whether it's appendicitis. When you come back to school at Dover-Sherborn High School after missing one day, and those of you who are high schoolers know, you have a lot of work to make up. If you miss a week or 2 weeks, you don't even know where to begin as more work starts to come at you. So the Bridge program serves as a liaison. There's counselors involved as well as an educator who helps students navigate with their classroom teachers. What are the priority assignments that I need to get done in order to continue on with the learning and not be left behind, but also be able to maintain the fastball still coming at me. Services for those students who qualify, again, roughly 16% of our population. We have academic support services where students can go to the academic support program or the center or the classroom and work with special educators on their goals. And we're trying to increase their skills, maybe around reading or writing or math, so that they can make then up those, make progress in those areas and then be able to work alongside their peers in the classroom. Inclusion, we have many students from a number of different backgrounds mixed in together in classes, and you'll often see special educators or educational assistants working together with teachers in the classroom. And we're moving towards more co-teaching, whereas instead of having the general ed teacher or the math teacher doing the teaching, we're having the special education teacher teach as well, so that we're both are learning from each other practices that will meet the needs of all students. Related services, those are things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language. Those are available to our students, K-12, and the multi-language learner program I mentioned before. We'll talk about it a little later, but we do have a tiered system of support for all of our students. We continue to look at data quarterly to see what students might need extra support. We have coaches now at the elementary level in literacy, math, and social emotional learning who work with our teachers, who work with our kids, who help develop interventions for our students, and then the interventionist deliver those services. At the middle school now, we have a reading specialist and a math specialist. One might be in the audience, who are working with our teachers about expanding the repertoire of practices to meet the needs of kids, but also helping design programs for students who might need a little bit of extra. Athletics and activities, so I'm not going to go over all these. So we have over 50 clubs at the high school alone. There's just a sampling of them. Arts, we have every kind of music program that you want and the drama program. And if you haven't been to a musical or a show, I highly recommend it. And those run K to 12. There's opportunities in all of those areas. And then, of course, athletics for both men and women. Last year, we had the women's lacrosse team win the state championship. This year, the golf team. And even within our activities, Physics Olympiad has had some awards recently, Science Olympiad, Model UN. So our kids are super talented at whatever they decide to pursue, and our teachers are so devoted to giving them the practice they need throughout the week to get ready for these competitions. Student belonging. Yes, we want them to do well academically, and we want them to feel like they belong in our schools, that they have relationships with their peers, they have relationships with their teachers. It should actually be the opposite, because as you know, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, if a student doesn't feel like they belong and that they're not socially and emotionally regulated, they're not going to learn. But we'll talk about it backwards. So just a few indicators we've taken from our Panorama survey in terms of how our students feel like they're belonging. So do you feel like you belong in your school? 82% of our elementary students say yes. 75% say yes at the secondary level. How well do people at school understand you as a person? And how much respect do students at your school show you? So just a sampling of the questions that we have, and these are certainly some statistics where we're going to be holding ourselves accountable to the academic statistics, but we also want to make sure that we are making gains here so that every child has peers and adults that they're connecting with. Professional staff. So K to 12 in general, we have a ratio for every one child. We have 12 educators. That's classroom educators, that's specialists, that's special educators, that might be guidance counselors, but it's a nice small number, which is why our staff know our kids so well and develop those relationships. 88% of our staff tend to stay with us for a very long time. Dawn did the negotiations with me last year with the school committees and the teachers union, and our teachers stay, and they're on the top half of the matrix. 88% of our teachers are considered experienced by DESE. So that means DESE tracks, of course, our work and our licenses. So 88% of the teachers in our district have worked for at least 3 years as a teacher somewhere. 79% of teachers in our district have worked at least 3 years in Dover-Sherborn and therefore have earned professional teaching status here. Our operating budget. So I'm going to take the light version. Dawn can give you the heavy version at another point. But in the current year that we're in, these are the three budgets for our three districts for a total of over $43 million. And we are super appreciative to our taxpayers. Our tax rates are high. We have high expectations for the work that schools do as a result. And we try to be fiscally responsible with every penny of that. Also, what we track, as well as the state does, is our per pupil expenditure. DESE is only calculated through 2022, but you'll see roughly in each of the three districts, we spend over $20,000 a year on each kiddo. That includes mowing the lawn, classroom supplies, all of the above. One other piece that I want to share with you is we are audited every couple years for a number of reasons. So in the last 2 years, we've been audited on our civil rights laws and implementation of policies, special education, our multi-language learner program. Just next week, we're going to be audited on school leadership and governance, finance, human resources, and professional development. This was an audit done by our choice. For those of you who have heard, by bringing so many of our students back in the district and keeping them here and expanding our programming, we are using every space and every corner and every closet possible at the middle and high school. So with the support of the school committee, we brought in DRA to do a building audit study of middle school Linguist Commons and the high school to see if there's anything creative we can do to make more space, to make more 21st century learning collaborative spaces. And what I love here, and I'm not going to read you both, but this is an outside person who studies school schedules and how schools function, and therefore what their facilities look like and how they might advised us to do things differently. And in their report, I'll just read you the first one. At Dover-Sherborn, a very advanced academic program with an extensive range of course offerings leads to greater personalization, higher student achievement, greater student and parent satisfaction, high morale, and increased motivation. It simultaneously requires small class sizes, larger staffing, and extremely complex and creative scheduling in a culture supportive of the social and emotional needs of every student. Dover-Sherborn provides this very special combination of qualities. So this is someone who didn't have to give us accolades, but when I know met with Dawn a number of times, said, I can't believe the number of courses you run for a tiny school. This is unbelievable how you provide for students what they need. So some good accolades there. Share a vision for teaching and learning.
Ready. So in all of the entry work that myself and Superintendent McCoy did last year, what that kind of culminated in is looking at a 5-year strategic plan for the district. So this is next group of slides are going to run us through what that 5-year strategic plan might look like. So we've gotten a little glimpse into the numbers and what's going on in the district, and then we'll kind of run through some of the things that are currently going on in the district, and then some things that we have to look forward to as part of that strategic plan. I don't know if Superintendent McCoy, if you want to add anything about the strategic plan.
No, I think you captured it.
So the first big bucket of the strategic plan is excellence and innovation in learning. So we want to maintain academic excellence and rigor while adapting practices to prepare graduates for success in a rapidly changing world. And through the entry process last year, in talking to all the stakeholders, we identified a lot of strengths that we see within this bucket, as well as some areas that we want to continue to grow in that you'll be able to see in the next couple slides. Some guiding questions as well to help us organize that work and to direct that work over the next 5 years. Some of the things that are currently going on in terms of the academic pieces in teaching and learning at the elementary level, it's likely that you've heard that we are piloting 2 new curriculum for our elementary math curriculum, so Reveal Math and Illustrative Mathematics. I have to say I'm really proud of the process that our district undertook in piloting these 2 programs, because I feel like we've covered every base in our piloting. We've read the research on best math practices. We've read the reviews of these math programs. We've talked to assistant superintendents and math directors in other districts. We've done site visits to other districts to see these programs in action. We've had our teachers using some of these programs and giving us feedback. Our students have given us feedback. So I'm really proud of the fact that we've really put a lot into figuring out what is the best direction for our math curriculum at the elementary level. So currently we are filling out rubrics. We're getting feedback from general education teachers, special education teachers on these 2 programs. I feel lucky that myself, the principals, assistant principals get to go in and out of the classroom to see these programs in action. We feel really, really confident that in the end of the day, we'll have one of these programs that's a really good fit for the future of the math curriculum at the elementary level. I think both of these programs, what's really beneficial about them is that they focus around math talk and math discourse and encouraging students to talk about math. And that's something that I've seen when I've been in these classrooms, is seeing students being willing to take risks, to be wrong with their thinking in math. And both of these programs are also really student-centered, and they focus on real-world scenarios. So solving problems using the mathematics, using mathematical thinking. I was in a math class the other day, and students were thinking about how they would triple and then quadruple a banana bread recipe. And I was like, this is really useful. Like, you could use this right away. So they all have really good real-life connections. So you'll hear more about this at our March school committee meeting. And you can also find out more about our math piloting on our district website as well. Another thing that I think is important to address is you may have known that the Boston Globe has been running a series of articles about literacy throughout the state. And specifically, there's been information about one of the programs that we use as part of our literacy curriculum at the elementary level, units of study. And one thing that I really want to point out about this is that units of study, which if you've read these Boston Globe articles, has been identified as a low quality literacy program. When they say that, they're referring to the older version of the units of study. In K through 2, we've launched the revised units of study. And I think it's also important to note that the units of study is only one small segment of our students' overall literacy experience at the elementary level. So I feel like the Boston Globe articles are not telling the full story. As you can see from this slide, there's a number of things that we're doing at the elementary level. We have some fantastic literacy coaches that are keeping up to date on the research on the science of reading, that are working with teachers on lesson planning, going into the classroom and modeling and co-teaching. We made a great investment the past year in Geodes, decodable textbooks for our students. We use Foundations, we use the Heggerty program, all aligned with the science of reading. We have a number of our teachers on our staff that are trained in Wilson, that are trained in Orton Gillingham. We are investing a lot of time into gathering data from our students to identify places in literacy that we might need to have interventions, or we might need to pull students for some extra supports in terms of things like phonemic awareness. So when you hear units of study, low quality curriculum, I think it's important to note that it is just one piece of this overall literacy experience that people are having. One of the things that we're looking forward to is Ed Reports, which reviews a lot of the curriculum that's used throughout the whole country, is going to be evaluating the revised units of study that we're using K through 2. So they've told us that they're reviewing that in the first quarter of this year. We will see what they have to say, and then we will make further decisions about how we want to move forward with our literacy curriculum at the elementary level. But I know that the district teachers have expended a lot of time, energy, and resources on the units of study, so I think it's worth seeing now that the revised units of studies have addressed a lot of the criticisms in the first edition of it, to see what the Ed Report says, and then we'll also be talking more about this at a March school committee meeting as well. So that's a little piece of the elementary curriculum. Some other new initiatives that we're looking at. In 8th grade, we made a full transition into a civics curriculum. So it used to be more of a US 1 curriculum, and now we're leaning into the civics curriculum that the state has given a lot of resources and a lot of time to having students understand their civic responsibility, their civic duties. At the high school, we're seeing a lot of interesting courses. Computer science is continuing to grow, and we're offering a new computer science course. Financial literacy has been a very popular course when we think about kind of the real world things that we want students to walk away with. We have our one-to-one program, our one-to-one device program at K through 8 level. One of the things that I'm very excited about is at the high school we're working on an interdisciplinary course. So that's going to be taught by a variety of different content teachers, and it's going to combine lots of different disciplines, academic areas around like big questions of like, what is reality? What does it mean when something is, what's that question? What is could be one of the questions that they look at. And with these big picture questions that students can look at examples from literature, from history. We're kind of going to build in some place-based learning into that because we have Boston so close to us, and there's a variety of ways that we can incorporate place-based learning into it. So we're very excited about the development of that interdisciplinary course. Another thing that we have coming up at Pine Hill is the outdoor classroom that's about to be completed. So just seeing all the different ways that we can expand learning beyond just these 4 walls to think outside the box in terms of teaching and learning. So our strategic initiatives going through are really about figuring out how we develop that district-wide vision for teaching and learning. And it really focuses on this question that if we keep the portrait of the graduate as kind of like our North Star, the thing that we want students to get to, what does that mean for how we teach and what we teach? That's the curriculum and instruction piece. So if that's what we want, is to get students to the portrait of a graduate, how does that impact how we teach and what we teach? And the way that we're going to get there is through our best practices and our curriculum audit. So a little bit of background on how we are going to eventually get to this district-wide vision for teaching and learning. This began last summer when our leadership team and our instructional leaders got together and they thought through this prompt of what have been some of the most powerful learning experiences you've ever had throughout your life and what were components of those powerful learning experiences. We use that list and those components to think about what are some best practices that teachers can use if they're going to create those really powerful learning opportunities. So last fall, we had our teacher leaders go into each of the 4 buildings, and each building drafted a list of the best teaching practices, drawing upon that idea of what powerful learning experiences have been like. Throughout last year, the grades and departments thought about those best practices for the building and what they looked like, felt like, and sounded like in the classroom. Over the past summer, we worked together as a leadership team to synthesize the 4 schools' best practice into one list of district-wide best practices, which you can see here in this lovely poster that we made. And now that we've come up with this list of 9 best practices district-wide, we're starting to have our teachers put together a list of look-fors. So if you were looking, for example, at relevance, what would that look like in a 2nd grade classroom? What might that look like in an 11th grade history classroom versus an 11th grade math classroom when we're looking at these different best practices? So our hope is that when we offer professional development around how teachers can deepen their work in these best practices, if we're using these best practices to guide our teacher observations and give feedback to teachers, that we will achieve our goal of that shared vision of teaching and learning through these 9 best practices. And it's been great to go into faculty meetings this year to see the way that some buildings have been focusing on one of these best practices every month at their faculty meetings. And it's brought about some really rich discussions about, for example, how we can individualize learning experiences in all of our buildings. So that is the how we teach. The what we teach has been started with our curriculum audit process that we've begun. So last year we came up with a tool to use to go through kind of the what we're teaching and to think about how we weave together all of those roots of Dover-Sherborn that Superintendent McCoy had spoken about. Things like challenge success, portrait of a graduate, social emotional learning, diversity, equity, inclusion. And teachers have this tool now where they can look through the content, what they are teaching, and see kind of how they're doing to give feedback, to more so just have some reflection on how all these aspects on the outside are represented in the curriculum. So do we have content that is laying itself towards student engagement? Do we have content that is laying itself towards critical thinking, student expression and choice? You might note that a lot of these things overlap with the 9 best practices, which is intentional, to have the what we teach and the how we teach really working together in tandem with each other. So throughout last year and throughout this year, our teachers are looking through lessons, units, pieces of the curriculum, and they're thinking about and having discussions about how what they teach kind of touches upon all of these areas here on the outside. So here we can see a little bit of the curriculum review timeline. So last year, teachers were getting familiar with these elements on the outside. This year, they're identifying some big leverage points where they want to continue using the curriculum audit tool. Long term, we're hoping to use that curriculum audit tool to look at kind of year-long scope and sequences. But I think more than anything, what this whole process has meant for educators has been just getting them to have conversations and be mindful of all of these things. That we don't necessarily need to go in and take all of these things and audit, but we can take these things and we can plan moving forward with all of these things in mind. So some of the teachers gave their feedback on the curriculum review process, so I won't go through all this, but you can see that it's led to a lot of discussions. It's created excitement. It's created a sense of urgency and empowerment for the teachers to really think about what they're teaching and to look at these various aspects that we see outside here. Right, next bucket.
I can't help myself talking about teaching and learning, so I'm going to rewind for a second. Oops, backwards. I'm just thinking about the workshop we did with teachers, and I want to mention a couple things about. Oh, no, where's the best practices? Sorry. Okay, so as Jenny mentioned, we had our teachers think of an experience in their lifetime from age 0 to however old they are now that was really meaningful and powerful. What were the conditions? What did the teacher or the coach do? What were they doing? What was the task like? And they identified things kind of like this. And then through time, Denny was able to work with our instructional leaders to clean them up and come up with these 9 best practices. Through the entry process, we also asked students, when do you find learning most engaging and meaningful? And they gave us lots of examples, pages and pages and pages of examples. So Denny and I went through them and tried to synthesize, like, all right, where are the patterns? Where are the themes emerging? They landed on almost all 9 things. Then when you take the edu jargon that, you know, some of us in the room know when you're talking about MTSS and universal design for learning, differentiation, DEI, that's a lot of acronyms. And for a long time, our educators were like, well, do you want me to do UDL or do you want me to do MTSS? Or do you want me to focus on social emotional learning? So what's neat is if you look at the research behind all of those different philosophies and thought processes and how to meet the needs of kids, and you throw them in a blender and say, all right, how can we like check all these boxes at the same time? You land at these 9 best practices. So teachers experienced it, kids said it, and we see it in the research. Sorry, couldn't help it. All right, back to my challenge and support all students. So our goal here is to enhance programming to ensure all students are able to achieve their full potential within a supporting learning environment. So what are we currently doing? Earlier on, I talked about our multi-tiered system of support where we have data teams quarterly looking at student data, coming up with interventions that the coaches and the interventionists can work on with students. The multi-language lingual program I mentioned earlier, our SEL programming that I mentioned going all the way through, both with the Fly 5 curriculum that we are piloting, as well as some of the programming and services I mentioned under special education. At the high school, we, in 10th grade, do the SBIRT, which is a quick survey with students to identify students who might need interventions based on substance abuse. It's been something that we've been doing for years and years and years, and then working with parents to make sure that students get the support that they need. With the help of some grant funding through Harvard Medical School and MGH, I believe, we now have a part-time person, an expert coach working with us. So as opposed to just doing the survey and providing like a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention for students who already might be at risk or in need, they're going to be working with 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students through guidance workshops, through seminars, through Flex Block, to do a little bit of education and reminder of all those really important principles they learned about substance abuse K to 9, so say 6 to 9. Other examples of community building, we have Chickering Citizens this year. The 5th graders are volunteering in younger classes and helping out with their peers. We have the peer leadership team, the peer leadership program at the middle school now, where our students are trained in how to address bullying or bias or unkind things when they're said and kind of stick up for their peers. And we have a similar program at the high school. I mentioned lunches and recess. We've made sure to get students a break because even though it might take 10 minutes out of learning, the next 10 minutes of learning are far more effective when you get them up and walking around. Student councils, of course, health club. And the last piece is, I mentioned peer leaders being able to address incidents when they happen. We want to equip all of our teachers and all of our students to be able to stop bullying, stop something mean when it happens, and kind of remove that from the culture. So we're working with our teachers and our students on something called Stop It, Name It, Claim It. Say, please don't say that. That's not kind. You know, it feels like this. And that's not part of our culture. So something we're working on there. Moving forward, we have lots of new things around a rigorous curriculum, making sure that our teachers have practices to individualize the curriculum, the MTSS program that I'll go back to in a minute, building a positive community culture, both of community and relationships, but also treating each other with respect, and then making sure that we have similar expectations as the students go through in terms of what we expect of them and how we react when perhaps they make a poor decision. So MTSS, I'm not going to walk through this, but again, this is the teaching and the learning and the supports that all students need. And then through the data process, we identify roughly 20% of students who might need a little bit of extra boost, and that's where our coaches and interventionists come in. And then those who need more ongoing support, which is roughly 5% of the population, will get that additional support from the coaches, perhaps some special educators. And that's in the realm of social emotional learning, academics, and behavior, that those things are supported. Restorative practices, you might have heard a little bit about this. Please save the date. We're going to be talking a lot about this on February 8th, 6:30, same place, and recorded for those who can't make it. But if you think about the word discipline, and it goes back to, you go back to the Latin root, it's really to learn. And so giving detentions, suspending a child from school and letting them stay home and play video games for how many extra days. Sometimes that works, but most times it doesn't. So how can we make sure that we hold our students accountable to good behavior, respectful behavior? Sometimes there are going to be experiences, whether it's drugs or alcohol or some sort of altercation, where we might have to suspend a child. And even if we have to do that or not, how can we work with our students to build a positive culture of respect and community where hopefully those things don't happen? But if they do, we'll have students sitting down with each other talking about how Denny made me feel when he said that to me, and how can we repair our relationship and move forward either as peers or as friends. Still holding people accountable, and then if we see lots of the same pattern bubbling up, how do we address that as a community to kind of reduce that behavior? So, see you in a couple weeks. Professional learning, let's see.
This is a quicker bucket than the first bucket that I've talked about. So professional learning and growth, so some of the strengths that were identified through the entry process last year, definitely a collaborative culture of our teachers working together across disciplines, and some areas for growth, figuring out where we can make PD and kind of tailor it to teachers. We always say that we want to individualize learning for our students. We want to do the same thing for our teachers, and to think about like the teacher evaluation process and how we can make that so it feels meaningful to teachers and not just like a part of the process that they have to go through. So some of the highlights here to talk about is making sure that everything that we are doing is in line. And what I did is I just screenshotted things because I wanted you to see where they all come from, that I did put them into kind of a nice, neat, unified font. We have a lot of great alignment, vertical alignment. When we start up here with our strategic plan, we start here and think about our district goals just for this year that feed into each school and their school improvement plan, which is then feeding in to our teachers and the student learning goals and the professional practice goals that they set for themselves every year as part of the evaluation process. And kind of a step below this, if there was another step, would be the experiences from students and what teachers are hearing from students. And as Superintendent McCoy pointed out, the experiences that we heard from students last year during our focus groups are what informed this part. So it's really this like two-way arrow of the vision that we have for the district, the strategic plan, going all the way down to the teacher level, and really being aligned. So we can see in this example how the excellence and innovation in learning, how that starts as part of our strategic plan, and then how that gets woven into our one-year goals, our school improvement plans, and then at a teacher level, what they're doing and setting goals for those things. So that's been a big part of this bucket under professional development and learning, is making sure that we have kind of this vertical alignment of all the goals and we're all kind of rowing in the same direction to try to meet these goals. The other thing I'll point out is our professional development that we've been doing to try to boost innovation. On November 27th, we had a full day of professional development, and I just wanted to give you a sampling of some of the workshops that we offered to teachers that day. We were thinking about supporting student readers and writers in every classroom. We did something very specifically for our preschool through grade 2 teachers. What does project-based learning look like at the lower elementary level? And then you can see 2 sessions that we did on AI, artificial intelligence, at the secondary level and the elementary level. So this is one of the ways that I feel like Dover-Sherborn can really be at the cutting edge of what's going on, because we know that AI is going to be a really important hinge point just in history in general. And then it's going to change a lot of what we do, and just thinking how we can be ahead of that and how teachers can use that to help plan, to help differentiate, to actually meet those 9 best practices that we talked about. There are a lot of great AI tools. And then we know that students are going to be using them, not just academically, but in the future in the workforce. AI is going to be something that is going to become a part of the future workforce. So these were great sessions for teachers to kind of dive in, dig into these tools, and begin using them and getting familiar with them. And a lot of the assistant superintendents I talked to throughout the state say that this is something that they're kind of just getting started on. So I'm really, really proud of the district for jumping into this, and for the teachers to jump into this, because it does feel uncomfortable when you're navigating things like ChatGPT and you're wondering, Now our students just going to type in a prompt into ChatGPT and have it write their essay. So I really applaud our teachers for leaning into this and having some hard conversations and thinking about a future that seems really uncertain when you think about AI. Great.
All right, so this is bucket number 4. We're almost there. There's 5 buckets. You can do it. So family and community engagement. This is certainly something that we tried to engage with last year and be transparent in the work that we're doing, and certainly want to maintain and continue, and it's a work in progress, and we're open to feedback. So engage families and community members in the strategic pursuit of a shared vision and mission. So number 1, we have a new website. Thank goodness. So I hope that you've been to our website. It's a huge improvement. We're trying to keep it updated. We're a small district. We're a lean district. We do not have a website person. So it's really up to us and the building principals to keep, and our administrative assistants to keep things up and running. We're doing our best, but it's a work in progress. In that, we have the communication hub. If you haven't checked that out, you can go into the communication hub, and if you have children in multiple buildings, or you're curious what's happening at the other elementary school, you can go in there and read all the newsletters from all 4 buildings or the announcements. It also has great translation services that are automatic for families, which they used to have to cut and paste and put in Google, and now it's just automatic through the website. So super fantastic. We're working on improving our newsletters, and so you're going to see kind of the growing pains of that happen this year, that we want, quick introduction from the leader, whether it's the principal or myself, a focus on the teaching and learning that's happening in the classroom, some upcoming events, reminders, and of course then the links that you need. Soon you'll be seeing the new headers that are all aligned, a little bit of branding there and collaboration. And we're also working on both the proactive, like the newsletters and letting you know what's happening in the classrooms, or the pilots that we're doing, but also the reactive. And it's a work in progress. When there are tragic things that happen in the world, in our community, when do we send information? How do we send information? Who sends the information? How do we maintain the respect of those involved? I've been working with my job-alike groups locally, and I'm also now part of a national group, really starting to think about how do we react to world events, local events, and some of the issues that have become very divisive within communities. We have hybrid options. This is an example. So we are scheduling back in August, and we could have told you what the dates were for all of these sessions that we promised you last year, and we are recording them, and we'll be sharing them out to people who can't be here. I had 4 superintendent office hours. 2 were in person, 2 are on Zoom, different times of the day, different days of the week, to try to catch the most parents and caregivers possible. And then I've also been going out to each of the 4 PTOs and both Council on Aging to engage parents and our community members in deeper conversation. We have SROs in both Dover and Sherborn, school resource officers. They are fantastic. One of them comes with a dog. We're working on the other one. But they are in and out of the building, talking with kids, building relationships. And anytime West comes around, it just makes the kids' day. So that's a fantastic resource for us. And then using the community for whether we need a sleep expert to come talk about the change in start times. We have an industry panel coming up in March to talk about all different fields. So we're going to be looking for parents and community members to volunteer for that, so we can learn about what was your journey to get there. Was it a straight line or kind of crooked? What does that look like in 5 years? Who are you going to be recruiting? What skills do they need? How is AI affecting you? So using our community for things like the industry panel, but also seminar day that we have every other year at the high school, which is very similar. Moving forward, streamlining practices. I talked about transparent dialogue, making sure that all of our parents have access to information, so if they speak a different language, that they have a liaison or translation so that they know how to interact or when to interact with the community and teachers, and then continuing to work on our METCO program. METCO is launching the 2.0 of their program, so here we are 50-something years later, and they're asking, and we are committing as 19 school districts to go back to why METCO exists, what it means. And we have lots of students and teachers and parents who don't really understand the METCO program. So how can we go back to its principles, learn about it, and then continue to develop relationships with our Boston families? Parent Square. This is an app we're exploring, and it's going to hopefully make parents' lives easier, myself included. I work here. I get lots of emails and texts from teachers and principals. I still can't stay on top of everything that comes through. This is probably what we feel like. Where is that email about the field trip? When is that date? Was it a text? Who sent it? Whereas now, those of you who like email, you can certainly stick with email. There will be an app on your phone called Parent Square, where all of the information from all of your children's schools, from all of the individuals involved, will come. One space. And we'll be able to do newsletters through that, school announcements about snow days, lots of exciting things. We're just in the beginning stages of that. We're going to have to make sure that all of you are onboarded, whatever our staff and educators need to know, but it's super exciting. And those who live in districts who have already adopted Parent Square, it's like rave reviews. So part of our communication plan moving forward. Last but not least, safe and sustainable spaces. So we want to evaluate and update facilities to ensure safe, sufficient, and sustainable spaces amidst a changing educational and environmental landscape. So there's lots of things here. Safety. In 2018, we did a safety audit with Synergy 911, which resulted in changes to the physical layout and some of the resources we have in our building, as well as training. And the training has evolved from just training teachers and staff to now training our 6th through 12th graders to help in case there's ever an emergency, and doing developmental drills and training with our elementary students. So we want to continue to work on that. Safe spaces. For those of you who have children who go to or went through Pine Hill is not air conditioned. Last year we had to relocate, or this fall. Was it this year or last year?
This year.
This year, oh my goodness. Relocate some of our students to the library because after 3 days of excessive heat, there's just nothing we can do. So thanks to our Board of Selectmen in Sherborn, our town administrator, our school committee, we've engaged with a company who is not only looking at simple solutions like small change for treating air within the building, more expensive solutions, because what is the future of Pine Hill School? It's well loved. It's like that blanket that you love. It's taken care of, but it's aging. So we also simultaneously, while looking at air conditioning options, are looking at the building infrastructure and how long is it going to last us, and how much do we want to invest in air conditioning if we're going to renovate or if we're going to build a new school. Sustainable spaces. Again, thanks to Dawn. We are doing some renovations in our bathrooms. We have motion sensor faucets now, so they don't just stay on all day when somebody turns them on. We have electric hand dryers, so no more paper towels. We've stopped buying water bottles. And Dawn has the support of a sustainability group, mostly high school students behind her, to make all these changes. And when we're doing things like changing air handlers on the roof or repaving, we're always thinking about what are the green options and how can we adopt those moving forward. Did I miss anything? Yeah. Okay. So, what else? We want safe spaces, number one. We want sustainable spaces because that's our future. But we also want our kids to experience learning in the 21st century. So all of the Portrait of a Graduate skills, the teaching and learning, the how and the what that Denny talked about, we need the spaces that are conducive to them. So when we had the space audit here at the middle and high school, not only did they look at finding us, like where can we build an extra classroom, what's an awkward space that we can make into a small classroom, what classrooms are just so big that you can cut them in half. They also gave us several suggestions on how to make opportunities for kids to work in environments that look like what they're going to see when they go to college and career. So this is a proposal for our high school library, where we'd have 3 little study carrels like you see at the new Sherborn Library. We have some spaces both at the middle and high school, perhaps even this one, where we thought about perhaps putting in some class walls where we can have a collaboration space. Students can write on the walls, they can collaborate, they can Zoom, and do lots of neat things. So we have some ESSER funding that we're going to use to launch some of these projects this summer. Hopefully they'll be ready to go in fall. And then a list of other projects that we want to tackle as finances become available. Open architects. How are we going to hold ourselves accountable to the student data, the SEL data, and our strategic goals? We are already working with a company called Open Architects to develop data dashboards. We have one already for MCAS. So what used to take us hours to synthesize and look at item analysis, Erin's shaking her head, trends, individual student class data, school data, it's like this. It's an amazing time saver, and we get so much good information out of it. So we have that for MCAS. The next layer on top of that, we are developing an MTSS dashboard. So I keep talking about these quarterly data meetings where we look at literacy data, we look at math data, we look at SEL data, This will all be housed here, so where again, when teachers meet together, they can look at student level data, classroom level data, and then the principals can look at building level data to make decisions about how are we doing, where do we need to improve, how can we help each kiddo. Then on top of that is going to be the third layer, which is going to be the public-facing data dashboard, where we will make public to you our data so we can hold ourselves accountable to our academic goals, our social emotional belonging goals, and our strategic goals. So more work to come on that. This year, what are we tackling of all that? This is a 5-year plan. Some of it continued from the last 5 years when Andrew was here. Excellence in innovation and learning is something we started 7 years ago, and it's going to continue. This year, we're really looking at the best practices, the curriculum audit, the sense of belonging, and how do we make sure all of our students have peers and adults they can connect with, and all of the communication efforts that we're focused on. That's it. How do we do? What time is it?
7:30. Oh my goodness.
I could have planned that.